Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Must-See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. We've got 4 squares tonight and 3 special guest stars from all of the shows across the channel. Let me introduce everybody. We've got Mr. Ryan Scow. We've got Chris Canzaneri, Steve Keeler, our center square, and then helping out tonight because we've got a bunch of squares that are out. We've got Rick Labonte, Jamie Laszlo, and Craig Kaminsky. Howdy, everybody.
Hello.
What's up?
Hi, Pete. How are you?
Good evening.
Doing good. We got a kind of a fun show today. This is a request and idea from one of our viewers, and basically the topic tonight is those better late than never bands. So a very well established band or artist that you were well aware of for most of your life for many, many years, but for whatever reason, you just never listened to. And then years and years later, you decided to give that band or artist a chance and you fell in love with their music. And now you were fully on board with the music of that band or artist. So better late than never. Let's let our guest stars go first today. So let's start off with, we'll go Craig, Jamie, Rick, Steve, Chris, Ryan, and myself, and we'll go round and round. We're each picking 3. So Craig, what's your first choice today? Your first better late than never band?
Well, my first one goes as a better late than never, and it's not exactly a well-established band, but by the time that I got into them, they had long broken up, but have since reformed. So this was in the 80s, I saw a video on the Canadian version of MTV, which was Much Music, that I had on my satellite dish, and the song was called "We Can't Be Beaten" by Rose Tattoo. It was an Australian band that I really liked it. Saw another video called "Branded" from the same, I believe it's from the same album. And these weren't readily available in America. And by the time that I saw these videos, the band had broken up in around 1984, 1985. So years later, I found a compilation and really and enjoyed it. And then again, through going to record shows, I finally pulled the trigger and started getting all of the band's albums and such. So by the time I was into them, they were kind of long gone. Now in the early 2000s, they reformed and put out a few albums. One's called Pain. This one's called Blood Brothers from 2007. And their last album is actually a re-recording of their debut called Outlaws. And one of the guys that's in the band now, most of the original band members have died over the years, but one of the band members now, this guy right here, is Mark Evans. He was the original bass player for AC/DC, who played on all their albums up through Let There Be Rock. So, and the singer is the only original guy left, Angry Anderson. He's possibly known to most people as he was in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. He's the guy that gets beat up a lot in that movie. But Rose Tattoo never really broke in America, and they're probably best known for having Guns N' Roses cover Nice Boys on their Live Like a Suicide EP before they became big. They also had a song called Rock and Roll Outlaw, which was covered by Keel and I think a few other bands. But it's a band that I love, and I've gotten. These are all imported ones that I found years after the fact that they've broken up. But love this band, Rose Tattoo.
Cool.
They're probably my favorite biker rock. I always thought of them like biker rock band.
Yeah.
But they were supposed to tour the U.S. and that's like a COVID casualty because tour got scheduled, rescheduled, and it's just never going to happen. So I just gave up seeing them.
They were scheduled to play in Philadelphia, I believe, in March of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And around here, they never became big. They would play clubs, maybe. They play the European festival circuit, so they'll play Wacken and all these big Euro festivals, and that's where they make their money, and staying in Australia, but they just never broke it big here.
No, they were never big in the States, but they're a great
two guys in Rose Tattoo used to play in Buffalo.
Yeah, Pete
Buffalo
Wells, guys from their original, from their first album.
Okay.
But yeah, they were in Buffalo, and which again, that's another band I'd have to get into at some point. I know that you've covered them on some of the
good band.
cuts.
The first Rose Tattoo was 78, so yeah, it's going way back.
Yeah, they go from 78 to 84, and then they reformed in the early 2000s.
Awesome. Great pick. I love those guys.
Cool. All right, Jamie, what do you got?
All right. I never listened to Rose Tattoo, but I kind of imagine them for some reason as you tell me if I'm right, a lighter Accept or a heavier Thin Lizzy.
More like AC/DC, but more in a tougher kind of. They have a lot of slide guitar in the. I'm a sucker for slide guitar.
Southern rock, even though they're
a lot of boogie type stuff, but then some bluesy things too. Two guitar, five guys, so two guitarists, but one guy almost always plays slide.
Okay.
Yeah, like maybe a Blackfoot, Molly Hatchet kind of vibe in there too. Definitely a southern rock thing. It's really cool.
But like Ryan said, like a biker rock type vibe.
All right.
Cool. So we lost
my first one's a little embarrassing because of how long this band has been around, how many of the radio hits I knew and liked, and how much I love them now. You would think I loved them my whole life, or I've owned all their albums my whole life, but that's not really the case. I kind of fake it. And I'm embarrassed that the first Kinks song I ever heard was Come Dancing, that I knew was the Kinks. I might have heard, their other songs, but I didn't know who it was. I remember my buddy bought this when we were 12, and all I knew was Come Dancing. And we were all into like Van Halen. I'm like, you bought that album? And he says, oh no, dude, the Kinks are good. And then I learned, growing up through my teens, oh yeah, that's a good hit. I like that song. Never turned a channel on them. Even like the deeper cuts, like Celluloid Heroes, when that would come on the radio every once in a while, or Rock and Roll Fantasy, even like those. And I like the single off the next album too, Do It Again. Did I still buy any albums? I don't know why. I just never went down that path. And then I felt like as I got older, they got so many albums. One day I'll dive into that. Well, one day I did. I actually downloaded like some greatest hits about 6 years ago. And a lot of those songs on the greatest hits, I didn't know. And I put it in my phone and I'd listen to it in the car. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I need to start buying the real albums. So the first one I bought was Misfits. And here's the original master recording. This supposedly sounds better. I never did a side-by-side. And I showed these albums on the last Curse of the Collectors. I showed most of the cool ones I have. And I own every single album now on vinyl, even the hard to find shit I got now. And I like this one. I found it in the dollar bin, 1978. What do you think they were trying to capitalize on there?
For sure.
As seen on TV. So I can imagine like the commercial for this. If you like Kiss,
the Kinks.
So yeah, now I would say over the last, I've been listening to them a lot now since I dove in 6 years ago. But over the last year and a half to 2 years, I would say the Kinks are probably the most listened to band by me. And we even have a Kinks cover band in Columbus. Yeah, I know. How strange is that? And they got a trombone, they got the French horn. The dude kind of looks like Ray Davies. And I went to go see them about 6 months ago, and they were fantastic. And they played a couple of weeks ago, but I had to miss them. But I would have been there if I could. They're great. So yeah, the Kinks. I'm all in now. All in.
Better late than never, right?
I hope that cover band played Destroyer.
You know what? They kind of stuck to 1972 and back, except they ended with Come Dancing. But I heard, because I talked to the guy, he said, we're going to learn some later songs. And I think they threw that in the mix in the show I missed.
I will say, Jamie, I get told by every person from the UK who likes the Kinks that the only music that really matters to them is 1972 and back. because most of us Americans like the later stuff.
That arena rock, right?
Yeah, and they did that great, but apparently that's not, we don't get the Kinks like they do. I'm like, all right, well, whatever.
I like it all. I even like the first album.
Cool, good pick. All right, Rick, what do you got?
Well, my 3 picks that I'll be sharing tonight. First of all, good to see everybody. I'm glad to be a part of it. I got to tell you, these are all SOT discoveries. Like, how in the hell did I not know this? And being so, surrounded by all kinds of rock radio from Detroit and Toronto and London and everything. But this one is actually, because my buddy Jamie is one of our homework assignments, one of the first of the whole series. And I was given a really out of my wheelhouse. Anybody knows I collect all the classic rock. I have all the rock and roll history. I have all the blues, from the pioneer blues right up to the present day. I love my metal. I love progressive metal. I love prog rock. But I never went into the area of growl in the metal. And Jamie gave me a ride with Opeth. And the famous one, of course, was the Black Water Park. And then I kept on getting more, and every time I got more, I ordered another one. Every time I got one, came in the mail. So I'm almost done the discography, and I really am kind of embarrassed that I never jump on the wagon that soon. And even though they were one of the more recent bands, the bands I'm going to talk about later, or maybe even further back, but you understand why I might not have took a chance. But this was all because of my friendship and being a part of this program. I was taking a chance. I would have never just went out and just experiment and take a gamble and buy the CD. And it wasn't the album cover that was appealing to me to grab it, but it was my buddy's suggestion, and I did like it. And I really, really was into the music and the message. And every album after that, to me, was an improvement too. It's like, and I know everybody said this is a great place to start, but everything I discovered after that, wasn't a disappointment. Just put it that way. So that's where I joined the whole kick like everybody else, and now I finally understand what the appeal is.
And now you'll start maybe you'll start reaching out to other bands who have similar type things going on, like Opeth.
Right on.
Which Opeth album would you say is your favorite so far?
I like Sorcery, and I like the Ghost.
Ghost Reveries, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I like those a lot. I like the ones where, the growl is less and more vocal harmony, but I appreciate it all. Like, I understand the whole journey that they're taking themselves to.
See, it's a gateway drug, Rick. In 6 years, you'll be going, I just bought the new Pig Destroyer. Man, it kicks ass. I'm telling you, it seeps in that death metal growl and you don't even notice.
Oh, yeah. It's actually part musical, and it's actually part of the mood that they're trying to translate at the time. I think it's great. Remember, music is what feeling sounds like, and that's what they deliver. It's definitely deep.
Cool. So Cans, I guess you're probably having maybe the storm is causing internet problems, but yeah.
Yeah, power went out. So
yeah. Okay, well, welcome back. So what you missed is Jamie picked the Kinks and Rick picked Opeth. What is your first pick?
It's my turn?
Yep.
Okay. This was an artist that probably released 10 albums before I was even born. Stayed relevant up until a couple years ago, I guess. It was impossible to not hear music from this person. And I pretty much, as a kid, if anything was inescapable, I kind of disliked it. But recently I started getting into this guy's early 70s output, and I'm talking about Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And man, for the first few years of the 70s, this guy was amazing. And I kind of started there, and I'm still checking out new stuff. But this Intervisions was the first album I got, and I think I got it because of they covered Red Hot Chili Peppers covered Higher Ground. But yeah, not a very SOT artist, but and some of the stuff he was doing in the early 70s was just unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff.
Great pick.
Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about Stevie Wonder with Higher Ground. In Middletown High School, when that was a hit record, we had a jukebox in the cafeteria, and it wasn't there too long. I think maybe one school year, or maybe even not a whole school year, and that song played constantly. like that's the song that the kids would play on that jukebox was Higher Ground. It's a great song.
Yeah, kills.
Wow,
Well,
a
love it.
jukebox in your high school cafeteria.
I'm
We had
dude,
that
it's
too.
real. It's a weird hazy memory, but yeah, they had music in the cafeteria. I'm sure it was a jukebox.
We had arcade games.
You did? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe.
we had, like, and they
mean,
would
if someone
exchange
from
them.
Middletown High School remembers that, chime in, but I don't know if anybody.
We had high school DJs. We all get a chance to sign up to do that and play the tunes on that whole lunch hour.
Maybe
had
it was a
keggers.
DJ. I don't remember. I'll have to ask one of my school.
Yes, we got the shaft of Goshen, man. All we got was terrible food and
no, Bert, we had a
Warwick got nothing.
cafeteria.
No pinball machines in Goshen.
no, nothing.
Yeah, we had a CD jukebox, and I was on student council, and that was one of the assignments that I had to help fill the jukebox. So we put a bunch of, this is late 80s, so we put a bunch of classic rock and things like that, one of which was Iron Butterfly in In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. So what would happen is the jukebox, you'd have to pay for it, but then it would go free during the lunch hours. Depending on what time we had lunch, we would go to biology, and we would have like half class, and then we'd go to lunch. We would, as soon the machine would go free, we'd quick run over to the jukebox and we'd program In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida twice. And then we would go to biology. And then by the time that was done, it's like the others, we would put other things in that we wanted to hear. So we would torture the kids in lunch listening to 15 minutes of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida like twice. So they would hear that during lunch half hour the whole time. So everybody would start to groan sometimes when you hear the organ coming on, and it'd be, oh no, not that song again.
No more, please.
Yeah, I'd be late to algebra because I was getting high score in elevator action. I'm not stopping this goddamn game. I'd walk in a little late. Sorry.
Crazy.
All right, Steve, what do you got? Your first choice for today.
You know what? I switched it around a little bit. I was going real 70s here, and I thought of a band that is more in the metal category. And so I'm going to go with them. But my original pick was Bob Marley and the Wailers, something that I really didn't listen to back then. And I still listen to Marley, especially to relax, and maybe if I'm outside doing a project, I like listening to them. But I'm gonna go with the Deftones because really didn't like new metal much at all, and I really still don't get into a lot of it except for a couple. But I remember hearing, excuse me, I'm hoarse here today for some reason. I remember hearing, like, I don't know, it was around 2000, maybe 2002. I was hanging out a lot with Steve Levin that used to work for me, and we would go to a strip club every Friday night, and we would hear certain songs. Of course, what rock songs they would play, and there would be limited, and there was a certain song that would come on. I'm like, who's that band? I really dig this song. It was the Deftones. It was on that Queen of the Dam soundtrack, which had quite a few bands from that era on. One of my Rose from the store was talking about that the other day. She loves that soundtrack. But What's Changing the House of Flies was a song. And I reached out, and I'm like, who are the Deftones? I'm like, I don't even know who they are. I've heard about them. They played like at an Ozfest or something, but ended up buying the Deftones self-titled in 2003. And a couple of songs I like off that was Minerva and Hexagram. And then, of course, I revisited some of their stuff, and I still love them to this day. I think the last album was in my top 5 when it came out the year before last. But White Pony, of course, would change, and Knife Party, 1997's Around the Fur, Be Quiet, Drive Far Away, MX, and My Own Summer, stuff like that. So I guess Deftones would be my pick. Originally, I was going with Marley. I love them both, but thought I'd try to go a little more metal on the channel.
There you go.
I almost picked Marley. I almost went that route because I only knew
we had
his
Stevie
greatest
Wonder
hits.
on, so
Yeah.
they both.
And then
had
my
great-
wife was a big Marley fan, and then I learned all the deep tracks and deep albums, and now
I think I might have had an 8-track of his growing up, but I totally didn't really listen to it, but didn't pay attention, but never not liked it. But now I can really listen to that, especially in the summertime. To me, Marley's like summertime music, just to Kickback. And
Legend pretty famous for that. Played that one record, everybody knows it.
oh
Or-
yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah,
It's like the
and-
greatest hit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then or even the live album that they did, the one live album '75. It pretty,
Those are the two that I have.
that's what I have
Those
too.
two.
I like Catch a Fire, Kaya, Uprising.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like his live album.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
now I'm listening to like Black Haruru and
Mhm.
Bunny Wailer.
Mm.
I've got reggae like albums this long now.
Peter Tosh,
Peter Tosh,
Tosh,
his live album is now one of my favorite live albums ever.
pretty good.
Don Carlos, the list goes on.
I saw the Wailers once years ago. It was at a SUNY Albany spring concert. It was a weird mix. It was a girl that worked for me at the time, Kara Sprague, who came over from Metal Blade to work in my record shop. She's now going on to be a school teacher, far out of the rock and roll metal scene, but she loved the Chili Peppers. So the Chili Peppers were the headliner. It's like, hey, you want to go see Chili Peppers? So I dragged one of my other friends and we drove up there. It was the Chili Peppers, Biz Markie, and the Wailers.
I was at that show, Steve.
You were there. I think we've talked about it. I remember Butch like talking crazy about it.
In August, we're gonna go see Ziggy Marley, and he's doing Bob Marley songs all night. Nothing but Bob Marley.
I remember it being a pouring, rainy spring day. It wasn't nice out, Pete. It wasn't a good day to go there, and we ended up at Saratoga Winners, drinking at Saratoga Winners that night, playing foosball. Because Saratoga Winners was the place to go up there then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You'd go there. It was like they had national acts, but you would go there just on a Friday, Saturday night because it was just where you'd go. It was cover band or something playing.
Yep. Cool. All right, Ryan.
All right, so this one, this is a well-known band. So I'm going to go back to when I was in 5th or 6th grade. I can't remember which one. So about 9 or 10 years old, approximately. And in my music class in middle school, we had to give a presentation on a band and an album. And I didn't really listen to any music in 5th or 6th grade. I hadn't gotten to that point in my life yet. So I went home and I told my parents, I'm like, I got to get up in front of class. Obviously, you got to talk to in front of your class at that age, which is fucking mortifying. So that part sucked. So my dad gave me a Rolling Stones album, which at this point, I think it was either Sticky Fingers or Beggar's Banquet. Memory fails me. I hope it was Sticky Fingers because the album cover is a little obscene with that famous Andy Warhol art. So I was looking for it and I couldn't find my copy. So I ended up digging up my copy of my favorite Stones album, Some Girls, just so I had something to show. So I give this presentation. I get up, I talk about it. I have no idea what the fuck I said. More, in front of class talking, and I never really listened to the Stones for years. Everybody, obviously they're super famous. So, plenty of their hits, unless you're living under a rock on a cave on the other side of Mars, you can't escape the Stones. But I didn't own any albums from them for a long time. I just knew a couple hits and like, this is good, always a good band. And it actually wasn't until I bought Some Girls years later. I'm like, man, this is really good, like sleazy rock and roll, like good bluesy, dirty, kind of vulgar at times. Like this is really good. And so I started digging into it. And of course, with the Stones, they got a lot of really good albums going from the late 60s right on through the 80s, right up to pretty much Steel Wheels for me. And there's a ton of albums in there. So, I got Exile on Main Street, Sticky Fingers, Let It Bleed, even weird stuff like Black and Blue, Tattoo You, Undercover, all that stuff. So this is all probably within the last, I don't even want to say 10 years, probably less than that, maybe like the last 7 or 8 years where I really like kind of dove in. I'm like, this is just really good, dirty, awesome, great rock and roll, so many good songs. And it's better late than ever because I kind of wish now, I love Sticky Fingers. I kind of wish I could remember what that, if there was like a video recording, like VHS recording of me looking, this is the album Sticky Fingers. I don't know what the hell I said. It was so long ago, but yeah, I remember giving a speech on it, and my dad's like, just talk about this album. Rolling Stones, everybody likes them. And decades later, I caught up, and I'm like, yeah, this band's fucking awesome. So that's my first choice.
Very cool. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a video recording of that too. Little Ryan,
I would love
there talking about the Stones.
I would love to see. I had no idea. I didn't listen to music at that age. I'll be honest. Like I remember my mom would play a lot of music in the house, but I heard it and I liked it, but I didn't really like dig into it. I just kind of appreciated it passively. Then years later, I'm like, I go back and I'm like, what band was that? I'm like, this is fucking good. It's usually how it is, but yeah, the Stones stood out to me because I remember having to give a speech on them. So now I love them. First choice.
You picked the world's greatest rock and roll band.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, at that age, I didn't know. I'm just all right. Talk about this album. Front shaking.
Yeah.
Pete, you were a late boomer on that band too, right?
They were one of my honorable mentions for today.
Yeah, because I recall you sharing that with us.
Yeah. So that's a
You even went to the Steel Wheel tour just to get drunk. You didn't really appreciate the tunes yet. And then you made up for that since then.
I
You
was
were
at
too
that
busy-
tour
what,
too.
What were you too
Pete,
busy
you missed
listening
a
to
good
thrash
show.
metal? I'm sorry.
Yeah, at 89, I was a lot of thrash. That was mainly it for me. Steve.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I was a fan when you gave that presentation, Ryan. I was like a fan as a young kid all the way through.
That's awesome. Yeah. I caught up late to them, but better late than never.
Better late than never. That's what we always say. Which
I like Bridges to Babylon too.
that's a solid
me too.
album. Yeah, solid album.
Voodoo Lounge.
Yeah.
All good stuff. All right, my first pick today. It's a shame Sydney's not on today. My first pick is Alice Cooper.
Oh.
Believe it or not, I never started listening to Alice Cooper till probably like the late 90s.
Really?
No idea why. Yeah.
Especially when you like Kiss at a young age and you were cool with the makeup and the show.
It's one of the big mysteries. I mean, I always obviously knew of him. I liked the stuff you heard on the radio, and I would always like, I knew he influenced Kiss and King Diamond, and the music. It's music that I should have always liked and listened to, because I mean, Alice is not that much different than everything else I've listened to my whole life. But for whatever reason, I just never went to see him live. Never went and bought any Alice Cooper albums, and I don't even remember what it was. It was like in the early 90s. I decided to, let me just go get a Alice. It was in a CD shop in New York City. I was working in the city for a couple of years, and I was like going through all the CD racks, and I saw Alice Cooper's greatest hits, the classic one they released back in the early 80s or whatever. And I was like, man, I don't have any Alice Cooper. How do I not have any Alice Cooper? Let me just buy this. And I bought it. And of course, I really liked it. Now, most of what was on there was stuff I already knew that was on the radio, right? Radio hits, but there were a couple other things I really dug. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I went and, one by one, I started getting like the early stuff like Killer and $1 Billion Babies and Love It to Death and all the other stuff. And then I'm just like, man, this rules, right? Why did I never listen to this guy before, right? But again, better late than never. I waited till like I was like 30 something before I really started listening to Alice Cooper, which is crazy when you think about it. So it's really only like in the last maybe 2 decades that I've really become a big Alice Cooper fan. And now I love, almost everything he's done, but I feel I feel like kind of silly that I never got into him when I was younger, because it's right up my alley. Right. So that's my first choice, Alice Cooper.
Especially a horror fan like you with movies and everything.
And that's the thing, Rick. It's for me, it's the total package. It's hard rocking. It's horror themes, the whole theatricalness of it all. I mean, it's just, I just never listened to him. So again,
have you seen him in concert?
Yeah, I've seen him a couple times. Yeah,
good.
Yeah, in fact, I remember the first time I went to see him live. I was just totally blown away, and I'm like, man, I could have been seeing this guy for like 30 years, and I waited till early 2000s. I'm like, well, whatever, that's okay. He's still out there playing, so it's no big deal.
Yep.
All right, Craig, back to you.
Well, since you just mentioned that, I'm only picking things that I have within arm's length here. And so one of my picks is Alice Cooper.
Ah, okay.
But for me, in 1986, I was 14, and I saw one of Alice's videos again on my Canadian MTV that I had for Teenage Frankenstein, which was from this album, Constrictor. I went out and bought this. This is the first cassette that I had bought from Alice at the time. A year later, I bought Raise Your Fist and Yell, and enjoyed those. The follow-up album was trash. Wasn't really into that. It sounded a little bit too commercial, and I was getting into different types of music. So I was well aware of Alice's background, but again, I just, like you had said, I never went out and bought any of his albums or anything. years and years later, I had the chance to see him live, and I checked my ticket stubs. This was in October of 2003, and he was touring behind this album, The Eyes of Alice Cooper. And it was one of those kid going to Disneyland like moments where it was like an epiphany, where, you know, not only visually, you know, all this cool stuff. And I saw him at Penn's Peak in Jim Thorpe, PA, which is not a really big place. So I was really close. And seeing that visually, you know, of course it's really cool, but I really liked the music. And the songs that he was, some of them I think I knew just offhand, but the new songs that he had played from this I really liked. And soon thereafter went out and just started getting, you know, all the stuff. And it's we well documented it on earlier, where I even like the blackout years and everything, and just subsequently gotten all the, you know, the whole catalog and everything. So, and I've seen Alice in concert. I counted my stubs five times. And I got to see the Hollywood Vampires perform live in Bethlehem. So that was an added little bonus. So, but yeah, it was one of those things where, like you had said, Pete, I guess it was just one of those, I was into other things, and I just never went out and bought his albums. But it was once I saw Alice live that really converted me. And it was the tunes, not necessarily, and the visuals helped too.
Yeah, it's a total package, right? Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
I had in my hand a couple days ago an original vinyl pressing of The Last Temptation of Alice Cooper. Isn't that what it's called? From 93?
Yeah.
With the original comic book.
Oh.
They wanted $75 for it. And it was between that and something else. And I took to something else that I'll be showing on our next collector's show.
Gotcha. Cool. Well,
Can't get it all.
No, you can't get it all. You can't get it all. Cool. All right, Jamie, what do you got?
Well, Rick, I'm going to say the same band that I passed on to you. I wasn't as late as you. It was 2011, and I bought Heritage by Opeth. And I was sitting here before it was my turn. I'm trying to think, how did I get into them? Who edged me on? Because I don't think Banger TV was around at the time, and I wasn't watching this channel. So I have no idea how I got into them. And I didn't even know that they didn't growl on this. So that was a surprise. I think it was like 6 months old when I first bought it. I just wanted to get the newest one. And then, of course, I had to buy, you know, the deluxe surround sound version after that. And then I got Still Life. And I would play that. And that was the first growling ever played in this house.
Wow.
And my wife would be like, "What are you turning into? What happened?" I'm like, "This is pretty badass." And you know, I could have picked a lot of death metal bands for that have been around for a while for this exercise. I could have picked Death, but I went with the band I love the most. I mean, yeah, I never thought I would be listening to growls. Say, you know, when I first got into Mastodon, I thought that this is as heavy as I go right here. But now I've got Opeth coming out my ass. I got this. I got this.
Hey.
This. I got this. I got
the curse is real.
Now I got a Opeth logo in the back window of my Jeep. And once you do that, that's like getting a tattoo. You know, closest thing to getting a tattoo. So now you know you're all in.
Yeah, you're committed.
Yeah, look, I had to buy the magazine just because it came with the flexi little 45 disc.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just saw them last month with Mastodon, and they rocked. That's my third time. So yeah, I'm all in with Opeth. And yes, they were my gateway drug into growling. You know, I just decided one day, this is what it was, I believe. I said, there's so much new metal out there, not NU metal, the good kind of new metal. And I was thinking, if I don't get past the growling, I'm going to be so limited to what I can listen to that's new. So it's time to, how's the saying goes? You guys stay on the porch or get off the porch and run with the big dogs. I decided to get off the porch and growl with the big dogs. And I got over it. And now I'm listening to, you know, newer death metal bands that are even heavier than this, you know, like Gate Creeper and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm all in. Opeth all the way.
Right on.
Better late than never, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right, Rick.
Another better late
Wow.
than never in my for my collection.
Hey,
And I gotta say, you guys can understand maybe why I didn't jump on the bandwagon. Could you guys all understand this? But if you ever see Pete talk about this band, he explains, yes, if you think Chicago is the 80s, you gotta go to the 70s and check out that. And man, I'm already a fan of Electric Flag, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, some hits, and I always heard some Chicago hits, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I didn't think they were cool enough to get a whole album worth of that stuff. And I confess, I did like the 1982 Hard to Say I'm Story. I was 12 years old. I used to roller skate to that shit. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It was easy to get a girl to go dance with you, roller skating, you know. So it wasn't a bad song, but I didn't jump on the bandwagon with your inspiration and all that stuff of the 80s. So, you know, it just never really got in my collection. I did get their greatest hit one time through Columbia House. 82 to 89, and it's all that poppy 80s stuff, and that's stayed like that forever until I watched an SOT program, and you know, he was so enthusiastic, Pete, about the band that you guys, if you don't know what this band's about, you gotta check it out. So I did the YouTuber thing, you know, he'll tell you freeze the program, go check it out, open up another browser, and I would do exactly that at the same time he was telling me, and I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff, because it's not only jazz, freeform, psychedelia, pop, it's hard rock, it has all the stuff that I like, just put in a blender and mix it up. In most cases, on a double album for them. So anyway, I got there, and I just went and bought this box thing that has, you know, the first 10 albums or so. And man, what a great journey that was, to go through that in that order, and I love all of it. I do. I really like it all. I mean, I do love my favorite is the first, you know, the first 10 Chicago albums. But I mean, this is great stuff. And I was like, I would have been, to me, a disadvantage for everything I like about music to not have known that this band actually exists like that, with that kind of power, with that conviction. And like I said, it's never a dull moment, because just when you're starting to think you figured this band out, they're changing the music drastically. And so, to me, that was the ear candy moment to go for a trip where you didn't know where you're going to take you. You know, cause honestly, I thought Chicago was really all pop and, you know, bubblegum, whatever. I didn't know they could rock. And all the players, everybody's a great, you know, on their own, they're great. Put them in a band like that, and they all give each other some space to really branch out. It's on record. So sometimes you would have to see a band live to play like that, and they're doing that in their own studio stuff. So anyway, Chicago, better late than never.
Yeah, those 70s albums are great. So that collection's got all the studio albums from the 70s?
Yes.
Does it have the live album, the triple live
No,
album?
they don't. I have to get that separately. I heard it though, because but it's hard to find.
Carnegie
And,
Hall is well worth getting. Yeah, and the
Yeah, I'm
and the
gonna-
Japan album too is great. But yeah, cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
this is actually, like I said, maybe 2 years old, because I've been on following this channel for about 5 years now. So this is one of the newer examples.
Cool.
Where have I been all this time?
Yeah, yeah.
In
I would say anybody who
Canada.
thinks that Chicago is all about those 80s hits, go listen to the Chicago Transit Authority album, the debut. It will blow
right.
you away. It's so great.
Well, just so you know, I went to the concert just before COVID, and it was like about 2020, but it was in January, February, and people were complaining that they didn't play enough 80s song. And me, I was like, wow, they're playing all this stuff that they had no idea. Now, if they got the greatest hits of the 70s version, they have a greatest hits album. They did play all those Color Your World, all the obvious, but they played a lot of that great jamming stuff that it went over the heads of a lot of people. And I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah, because 75% of people go to see Chicago these days. All they want to hear is those 80s hits. That's it. That's all they care about. Yeah, good choice. All right, Cans, what do you got?
I gotta say, Rick, my Chicago journey is exactly the same as yours. But
Right
it's
on.
not what I picked for this band. But you covered it for me. Thank you.
Awesome.
My next pick, another non-SOT band. These guys have been around since the 80s. I think, though, the first time I ever became aware of them, they were on Beavis and Butthead and singing some song. I think it's called Vaseline, Flaming Lips. I remembered seeing that and thinking it sucked and moving on. And probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I heard a song by them called Fight Test, which sounds just like Cat Stevens. And I'm like, who is this? This isn't Cat Stevens, and I kind of looked into it and I listened to the album that it was on, and I ended up buying, this is the first album I got from them, which kicks ass, but that song's not on here. They ended up getting sued by Cat Stevens and settling and whatever, but I started listening to their music, and man, it's nothing like Vaseline, but it also is like Vaseline and how freaking weird everything they do is. I mean, they draw on influences from everything from, Neil Young to Tom Petty to the Beatles to, a dog barfing behind a dumpster or something. You never know what you're going to hear with these guys. They're crazy. Their live shows are legendary for just weird antics and insanity. And their music is just like that. So I think I remember trying to get you to check them out, Pete, and you're like, not for me. Nope.
Didn't they release an album in the late 90s that came on 4 CDs, and you had to play all 4 CDs on 4 separate players at the same time? And it was like some weird surround sound type thing.
I don't have that.
Nobody's gonna
I
do
think
that.
it was them.
Go looking for.
Oh my God.
I saw Flaming Lips live in '93. They nobody knew who they were. They opened up for it's funny that the ticket, since I was just looking at it, my ticket says Stone Temple Pilots and Butthole Surfers, and this was in '93. So this was for Stone Temple Pilots' first album. They were breaking big by the time I saw them. But what happened? And Flaming Lips actually went first. Nobody knew who they were. And so they just kind of did their thing. But the weird thing was that Stone Temple Pilots somehow played second. Everybody was going bananas for them because they played most of their first album, Core. And then as soon as they were done, almost like everybody left. Butthole Surfers comes on, and the place was like maybe a quarter full, and it was just weird. But the ticket actually flipped. So I think people thought that one group was opening for the other. But.
I love Flight Test, though. That's such a great song.
Yeah, I've never, other than hearing a couple songs here and there, I've never really listened to them much. But people always ask me about. It's like, Pete, why don't you talk about the Flaming Lips more on the channel? I'm like, there you have it now.
I'm trying to guess if you'd like them or not, and I can't put my finger on it.
No, I don't think you liked them. I think you cursed me out. I don't remember.
The only song I know is that Vaseline one. I saw that on 90210.
Well, you like XTC, and that's a surprise. So you always got surprises in you.
See that?
So I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe I'll dive into them at some point. All right, Mr. Kilo.
Hey, well, I'm back. This time I'm going back into the 70s. I'm talking about a band called Steely Dan. Of course, I liked the hits that were on the radio back then. Loved, Ricky and all those songs that were on the radio, but I really never dove into owning their records till much later in life. I think I might have got Asia first. I'm sure that was the one I got first, but I never had it. in the 70s. They were also a band that didn't play out back then either, so it wasn't a chance for me to go see them much when I was a kid growing up. But now, I mean, I love them. I got to see them at Bethel Woods a few years back, and finally got to see them perform. You know, with when the guitarist was still alive, and now I'm going to talk about. I love the Royal Scam from top to bottom. I love that album. Kid Charlemagne, the song The Royal Scam, I think it's such a great song. I love Don't Take Me Alive. And then of course, I guess I'll talk about Asia, Peg and Josie and Black Cow. It's just another solid album from front to back. And I guess the third album I would mention, if we were doing three, which we kind of usually do, would be Pretzel Logic. I love With a Gun. I love that like Western movie song that they do. And of course, got Ricky Don't Lose That Number and Night by Night. And it's a band that I can sit and listen to now in full. I mean, for many years now. I actually, years ago, when I had the smoke shop separate in the old store front, I went and loaded up an iPod and I went on and bought a bunch of CDs or whatever for the shop. And I would just download everything. And I made a classic rock playlist. And that's how I discovered a lot of the stuff from Steely Dan and some other bands too, like Marley and stuff. I said, well, I'm just going to load this album on there and shuffle. I'm not going to play PDH and I'm just going to play my own classic rock soundtrack. And I still have that iPod hooked up in the back of Rock Fantasy now in the pinball room. So it just plays a variety of everything and for the deep tracks, and it just, you know, loaded with all this stuff. So that's how I discovered a lot of the stuff by buying those albums. I go, wow, I never listened to this whole album before. And now I'm hearing a song play in the store, and it's great stuff. The Steely Dan. So I'm going way off the metal meter here tonight.
Nothing wrong with that.
I saw the first tour back in 1994. The very first show was in Detroit, and it was a big deal. But I remember going there and I said, I don't know all the songs, so I justified that. I knew half of it from the hits, but that's when I went deep. So 94 and the 90s, I ended up getting all the albums because I wanted to make sure I had every song that was played that night. And if I wasn't sure, I'm buying the whole shitload. And I did. But that was a great band to see that live, and being that was the first tour in a long time in 1994. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's just such cool, smooth music to jam out.
Very unique music too. Yeah.
They're coming back to Bethel, and I'm not going to make it this year, but I know they're playing like July 4th weekend.
Yeah, it's July 4th weekend. I'm still on the fence. I want to go, but I'm like, I don't know what we might be doing other stuff. So
it was like Doobie Brothers are there the night before, I know. And
yeah.
I'm actually having a pinball gathering that day. I had no other date to do it. It's like that Sunday before the 4th, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip it this year.
I hear you. All right, Ryan, you're up.
I didn't pick Steely Dan, but they're one of those bands for me because I just kind of ignored them forever. And then a friend of mine almost forced me to listen to the song The Caves of Altamira. He's like, nope, I don't want to hear shit. Just go on YouTube and listen to it. Shut the fuck up and come back and talk about it. And I did. I'm like, you know what? That's a really good song. And that kind of opened the door for me. And I got the Royal Scam, and then it kind of went from there. But he's like, no, yeah, I don't care. It's not soft rock bullshit. Listen to this song. It's really good. And all right, so my pick, so I'm going to go back to the school days again. So due to my age, I just turned 40. I was in school in the 90s. So a lot of bands in my school were punk rock. Punk was real big in the 90s, but it was shitty pop punk and ska. So for years, I hated this stuff because there was all these local bands, and they come out with a fucking horn section like Pat Boone. You know, I don't want to hear punk rock. I just hated all that shit. So I had this like really like axe to grind against it for years. And, people would mention bands, and I'd hear bands. And even when I kind of got over that, graduated from school, I didn't hear it. It kind of faded into the background. But I don't know, that axe just stayed there. So I ignored so many bands for years. And I got a friend of mine, my friend Craig, Bald Craig, another Bald Craig. There's too many of us. He's like, you have to, there was a punk band from England, one of the early bands that was very influential on thrash metal and death metal. Like huge influence on Metallica, huge influence on Megadeth, Slayer, all those guys. the band, they put out an album in '82. The band was called GBH, and the album was a City Baby Attacked by Rats. Like James Hetfield, all those guys have gone on record. They love these guys. And you listen to this show, like it's kind of the birth of thrash metal going way back then. But I ignored it because I'm like, I don't know. I knew the name for years. And I'm like, I kind of might like that, but I just never got around to it. But my buddy's like, no, you got to listen to these guys. They're fucking awesome. So I picked this album up a couple of years ago. And yeah, it's punk rock. It's old English hardcore. It sounds very English, but it's fast. It's aggressive. It's angry. You can definitely hear where the genesis of like a lot of crazier metal and like a lot of crazier music came out of this. So these guys were part of a little scene called UK 82. The biggest one was probably a band called Discharge. Another huge influence on all those guys. Metallica's covered a whole bunch of Discharge songs. They did it on Garage Inc. I think they did Free Speech for the Dumb. And another band called Exploited, who were pretty good. The Exploited were pretty big. These guys kind of, I guess they were, I don't know if they were as big, but man, they probably end up tied with Discharge for my favorite of the three. I listen to this album all the time, and now it's a deal like, man, if someone had told me back in high school, ignore all this dumb shit with these fucking like, the horn section, and everybody's up there with fucking trumpets. Just listen to this instead. This is like angry, nasty, like punk rock you'd want to hear in a basement, like people running around in a circle pit. None of this dumb shit. And that might have changed my opinion early on, but a couple decades had to pass before, I saw the error of my way. So my second choice is a GBH from England. And actually, they got a new album a couple of years ago, and they're still kicking ass, still around, still good, dirty, fun English punk rock, and good for them. So that's my favorite.
Would that be one of those time machine bands, Ryan, where you can go back and actually start listening to them back when you should have?
Yeah, and my friend who told me about him, Craig, they played at, I think, Gramercy Theater in Manhattan a couple of years ago. And I wanted to go, but like I already had tickets for a festival, like somewhere else, plane tickets booked, the whole deal. So I was totally committed to that. And so he goes, and I'm like, well, how was it? He's like, oh my God, it was like the fucking greatest thing ever. Like the whole crowd was locked in arms, singing along, moshing, having a great fucking time. The band loved it. I guess it was their first show here in a while, or first tour in a while. So they were playing their asses off. I'm like, man, I don't even remember where I went. I'm sure it was good, but I kind of regret that I didn't get to see it because they don't come around very often. So yeah, definitely a time machine band. Sure. If I could have gone back 20 years, like slap myself at 16, like don't worry about NoFX or Pennywise or Blink-182. Like listen to this, this will set you right.
There you go.
As much as I make fun of hair metal sometimes, I'm glad we had like bands like Motley Crue and Winger when I was in high school instead of like Mighty Boss Tones and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the 90s was it was rough.
Some of those 90s bands were awful.
It was rough.
Smash Mouth being played at your prom.
Third Eye Blind, Matchbox 20.
Smash Mouth had that meltdown at Bethel last year at the beer festival. You remember, Pete?
Yeah, that's what 30 years of sucking will do to you.
You get angry. You get angry at the world. You just lash out.
That craft. Is that this weekend coming up, or did it just pass that time?
No, it's this weekend. Yeah,
I was thinking about going Sunday. I don't know. They have Almost Queen and the Zeppelin cover band was playing, but last year my friend was working there. He said that's where that guy went crazy and started berating the audience. It was at that craft beer festival.
Oh boy, not good. Not good. All right. Well, I swear Steve and I were not comparing notes, but my second choice today is Steely Dan.
Boom.
Almost identical. Everything I was going to say, Steve basically has said. This is a band that I was always well aware of their radio hits. Always liked them. I just never bought a thing by them. And, all throughout, they obviously were broken up throughout the 80s, right? So it's not like I even had the opportunity to see them live. And then again, like in sometime in the early 90s, I just decided on a whim to buy like a greatest hits compilation, which was really good. And I had that for a bunch of years and I listened to it a lot. And then one day I heard, I don't know if someone played it for me or I heard it somewhere. I heard a song from them that wasn't on that hits compilation. And I'm like, man, that song rules. Why don't I have that? And then I went and did some research and I'm like, they don't even have that many albums. Let me just go get them all because I've liked everything I've heard by them. And then I bought, and this has become my favorite. I absolutely love the Royal Scam. Everything that Steve said is absolutely correct. And all their albums are great. And I've seen them live now. And I just love everything about them. They're kind of jazzy. They're poppy. They rock in spots. great musicianship, really unique vocals, and the songwriting craft is just like second to none. Just a really interesting, different band, so accessible, but yet very challenging. All these great studio musicians, and man, just such a great band. So yeah, Steely Dan, I should have been listening to these guys regularly back, 40 years ago, but better late than never. So
I did the same thing. I had the greatest hits live album. I mean, the greatest hits album, but they didn't have that song "Dirty Works," and I was hearing that on the radio, and so that's what got me to go. All right, and then what you said. Oh, they only have a handful of album.
Not a lot.
Okay, I'll just get them all. That's what I did.
Yeah, it's not a lot, and probably one of the great deep cut bands of all time. It's like their hits are amazing, but their deep cuts are like killer, like really, really good. So, all right, Craig, your final pick for the day.
This one is one that kind of like goes in shifts for me of a better late than never, where my favorite band probably is Deep Purple, and I had a best of the Deepest Purple some years ago.
I had that too.
And so that's kind of, I had started at that, and then I'm pretty sure as a result of Martin Popoff's '97 book, I decided to give Perpendicular a try. I really liked that, and then went backwards and started, just buying up everything. But I realized, I loved Gillan's voice, but then it was like, well, wait, what was he doing between '76 and the Born Again album with Black Sabbath? And I knew that he had a band, but it's like, well, what is it, and what kind of stuff is that? So my pick of Better Late Than Never is Gillan. And where
right
so
on.
and again, and some of this it's not my fault. I mean, this shit's hard to find. So I mean, I had to get it at a record show. So I started with Mr. Universe. Like that, ended up eventually getting the Japanese album because I needed to get better versions of these songs. And then we go on to Glory Road and Future Shock and Double Trouble and Magic. So that's the first shift. So I get done with all that, and then it's like, well, wait a second, he had some other stuff too. I really liked his voice, and so it's what's some other things that he had? It's like, oh yeah, he had the Gillan and Glover album. It's like, well, I like that. It's kind of light, but I just really enjoy his voice. Then it's like, well, I got Naked Thunder. This is a Russian album. I had to get this from Russia at the time, because couldn't find it anywhere. It's like, oh, well, let's get Toolbox here because that's sort of a that's an early '90s kind of a metallic album. Then then it's like, oh, I found out he put out this album called Dreamcatcher. This is a world music album sort of, and it's not that heavy, but again, it's his voice. I really like hearing it. Oh, Gillan's in, and where he re-records a lot of the songs and kind of heavies them up from some of these things. I was lucky enough to see him on this tour, and I got it in 2006 and got to see him play some of those songs. And I got his final solo album that he put out in 2009 called One Eye to Morocco. A little light, but pretty good. And then I remembered, it's like, oh crap, he had his first band that he did after Deep Purple, but Martin Popoff kind of shit all over him in his book, and so I never bought them, and then it's like, well, wait, you like his voice, so what the hell, you better go buy these. So I had to get Child in Time, and I actually thought that this was pretty good, and then it's like, oh well, and we got to get the this is a little jazz rocky in that, I have to be in the kind of a mood for this, but again, but it's a voice and I like it. I had to get it, and then finally, and then I got to get Scarabaeus. This is probably my favorite of the early three. So it was an exhausting thing to go and get once I jumped in, and but this was a better late than never, where obviously Gillan had been long gone by his band from 78 to 82 had been long gone by the time I got into them and everything, but then having to well after the fact, go and buy all these other albums. Most of them after the fact. A couple of them were new. Gillan's In and One Eye to Morocco I bought when they were new releases, but a lot of the other ones I had to retro buy, as as we say. But yeah, Ian Gillan band,
Great
whatever.
choice.
That was
That is a
that's
great
my,
choice. I could have
my-
picked that as well. I mean, he's been my
That might
favorite
better
singer.
late than never.
Yeah, I mean, he's been my favorite singer for like 40 years, but those Gillan albums, the Ian Gillan band and the Gillan albums, you couldn't get here. So
Right.
it's like they didn't exist, right?
Yeah,
So-
they were-
And if it wasn't for your channel, Pete, I wouldn't have that list that he just mentioned, because mine went up to mainly the 80s, but I didn't cover the 90s. I didn't get Gillan's In till I saw you do the ranking of the album. I went and got it. In fact, you did the history of Ian Gillan stuff. By doing that, we shared us what was going on. And right on, Craig. Great example, because he's a notable artist, but the music's not that accessible for everybody. I mean, to get it, that means not the music itself. And so you really had to do your homework. That's impressive.
But it was fun to go and find these things over the years, and like I said, a lot of them I at least a few of them I got at record shows, and where you it's like, well, I don't want to buy all 4 or 5 of these at the same time, because they were like $20 a piece back then, and a little expensive for me, not making what I make now, and so it was kind of like, well, I'd buy this one, and then you wait till next year and get a couple. This is pre-Amazon days or whatever, so it was kind of hard to find, but I'm glad I did.
Good. Yeah, those Gillan albums are fantastic. I love them.
Right on.
All right, Jamie, you're
I
fine.
had no idea there was that many Gillan records until this moment. I got Mr. Universe like 2 years ago, and I thought, maybe I should dive into all this stuff. Never mind. Too much. So I went to Kmart, I remember, as a kid, and they had cheap cassettes and CDs, like mixed CDs, random artists, various artists for sale. And I bought this Electric 70s, and I believe they had Electric 60s too. And it's just filled with some like 12 hits from the 70s, no big deal. But I'm just starting to kind of get into music a little bit, and and I had this one band on here, and I thought, what the hell is a Mott the Hoople? That doesn't even make sense to me. So the first time I ever heard Mott the Hoople was All the Young Dudes on this CD. And then I started noticing it on the radio. And then decade after decade after decade, that's the only song I knew. I knew David Bowie wrote it. I saw David Bowie live about, 17, 18 years ago, and he did it live. So that was cool. But that's all I knew about Mott the Hoople. And then one day, about a year and a half ago, I walked into a record store, and I saw this for $3, All the Young Dudes. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. Yeah, you can go on YouTube, but you know what? I'd rather buy a beat up record for $3 and try it the old fashioned way instead of going on YouTube and streaming it. There's just something more daring about it. Like you're really putting your money out there and risking it, like the old days. Mm-hmm. So I brought it home, and I was listening to it, and I was like, I'll be damned. This is a good record. I had no idea. So I got the big box set.
Yeah, it's a good
off of Amazon. You know what's strange, Pete? I ordered this one morning, way early, about 8 o'clock in the morning. About 2 hours later, you posted ranking the albums of Mott the Hoople. I was like, what the fuck? That's crazy. So then I actually got them at the same time because I just wanted to nip it in the bud. I got this little one where it has all the later albums after this one.
Yeah.
Cool.
But then it doesn't have the live album, so I got the anniversary edition of the live album too, and this kicks ass.
Yeah.
This is heavy rock right here.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at how good they are. I actually did a contrarian show where I defended my favorite Mott the Hoople album, and I talked with Martin Popoff for like 25 minutes straight on this band. And a year and a half ago, I couldn't talk more than 25 seconds I would have said all the young dudes. What? Nothing else to say. But I defended Mad Shadows as my favorite album, and I think this is fantastic. It's so hard. It's so easy to jump the gun and say, "Oh, it's a top 50 album now of all time for me," but it might be. Am I jumping the gun? I don't know. I think their live albums now in my top 20 favorite live albums of all time. Am I jumping the gun? Time will tell. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out. Hopefully it shakes out before I'm dead. And then I got, then you got to get the other ones on vinyl too, because you don't truly like a band unless you own at least 4 or 5 of their stuff on vinyl. I don't make the rules. That's just how it goes. So yeah, Mott the Hoople, named after like some British story book that was written about, like Hoople is like a guy down on his luck, and Mott was down on his luck or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
Did you buy the
Just like
two Mott albums, the ones without Ian Hunter?
They are on this one. And to me, they sound like Bad Cheap Trick is what they sound like to me. I'm not a big fan of them. The lead singer can kind of get on my nerves. But the other 3 albums on here, the Hoople, Mott, and all the young dudes. I mean, people call the Hoople and Mott their best 2 albums. So and you can get this for like $16-14.
You know how they're connected to Motley Crue and everything, right? Through the singer Nigel Benjamin was in the band that Nikki Sixx joined in the early 80s. I believe they were called London. And so they're tangentially
from the Mott days.
Yeah, the singer from those 2 albums, I believe his name's Nigel Benjamin, was the singer of
the one that
Nikki
took
Sixx's
after
band.
Ian.
Yeah.
Okay. Motley.
I seen him in concert with Ian, and he's great performer, like he command respect. The moment he comes in, he had the sunglasses, and he had the big hair, just like the 70s. And that was in 2019. And guys, he played like he was just a young person. Like you wouldn't know that this man is up there in the age because he didn't act like it.
He's a legend.
You know what I love about this band? Their songs take left turns. It starts off as a nice little ditty. Okay, this will be a 3-minute song. Turns out to be like a 9-minute song, and they're jamming at the end and just comes out of nowhere.
That album that you showed all the young dudes, Mick Ralph was in that band from what become Bad Company, right?
Yeah.
And he had that song Ready for Love, that version before Paul Rogers and put a spin on it. But that's pretty cool to hear that version like that. I thought that was pretty creative.
Yeah, it's pretty different.
I had no idea about that.
Cool. All right, Rick.
Okay, this one's a little embarrassing that I didn't get into it so late. Because I remember having a compilation album of, it was the late, like early 80s, and they had bands like The Knack, UFO, Rush, and there was just a song from whatever FM samples of the day, and it was actually, they used to give it to you when you're buying a new stereo system. They give you these kind of records so you can hear your first album if you didn't have a record when you bought a record player. And I remember that this band UFO, and I'm such a sci-fi guy. I love sci-fi movies and superheroes and all that stuff. So you would think they would take my imagination. So I think it was in my last order of Columbia House where I had to wrap up a deal, and there was the best of UFO. And so I grabbed it, and I loved every song, but I never went anywhere there. It didn't go past that. It's like being in Monopoly, never got past go. I don't understand, because every tune, I loved it a lot. And then Pete, I was in UK, traveling from Liverpool to this and that, and Pete was doing on the show, because I followed it regularly, the live album wars, and he put out Strangers in the Night, and I'm like, they don't have not one live. I don't even know what they sound like live. So I ordered it from UK, and I won't get it till I get home. And and he said, get the expanded version. So I corrected that, because I originally had an old version, and I got the expanded version. And so I loved it. And I can see why everybody say why it's such a iconic live album. And I feel kind of embarrassed I don't even know it, because I was a big fan of live albums. Like ever since I heard live, at least as a 10-year-old. I collect live albums before I even get their studio albums. I was like that as a kid. I was always like Cheap Trick. I got the live album before I got any of the studio stuff. It was always about that. But anyway, and I really enjoyed it. And so within months, I started justifying my collection. I got the big box set of the complete album from 74 to 86. And then I went and got all the other couple of albums after that, even the one with Jason Bonham on it, because Jason on it, that's a good reason right there. But I think I stopped at the last reunion album of Michael Schenker, I think. But I did get a couple of DVDs that they had that other guy, what's his name, Vinny? Playing somebody.
Yeah, Vinny Moore.
Yeah, playing, and Jason Bottom's on the kit. And so that was cool to get that DVD. But I'm telling you guys, I was late, considering how long this band has been around. And I love twin guitars, and I love the kind of song. I just love the band. I'm just like, how did I miss this? And I think about it, it's no justification for it, because I had the UFO one song, and it was Shoot Shoot, and I loved it. And I had this Greatest Hit Forever, and I loved every single song. I don't know why I did that. And that was one of the educational moments there where I started to say, okay, what are the greatest hits shit that I got that I could go a lot more deeper than I did? You know, when I started looking back and I saw CCR, the two greatest hits, Volume 1, Volume 2, I'm going to go get their albums. You know, I did that with a lot of bands. But this was the one that woke me up to say, hey, what else did you been hiding or losing out on information that you didn't know because you didn't go that further? So, so again, SOT educated me in of 3 different examples. Jamie giving me the homework assignment, Chicago, hearing you showing so passionate about it, and it's justified. And then one of the greatest live albums that I think won that year, right? The Young won the year. So I had to make sure I was in my collection, because all the runner-up, I had them all. I had the Made in Japan. I had, all the other albums that were big contenders. But I didn't have that, and I was a little embarrassed. But man, it's still one of my favorite. But I hear this album probably, I play it on maybe every 2 months. It gets back in my rotation. But anyway, caught up to all these bands and these albums, and I love it. And I even like the albums after Schenker. I do. But again, I knew more about Michael Schenker's group than I did with UFO. Really, I did, and I had to correct that.
Right. The important thing is you did, right? So there you go.
Yeah, like you said,
that's a ripe
better late than never.
That's a ripe topic for something where you have some bands. I mean, you Pete, you had a show of this before where some bands are just greatest hits bands, and you're set. You buy a compilation and you're fine with what you have. But then some bands graduate from a greatest hits to I want to jump a little further in, like Rick just said with UFO.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Cool. All right, Mr. Cans, what do you got?
Okay. I might have been doing this one about Deep Purple, because for many years as a little kid, I thought it was a song by Don Free and nothing else. But that just popped into my head. But my choice here, I get a lot of cringing and groaning when I say I like this band from friends. This might be a better Never Than Late for a lot of the people who are watching this. But Radiohead. For years, I had no time for this band. None at all. I had heard Creep. I thought it was okay. And I had heard some of their stuff that came after this album, which is decidedly not rock and roll, in my opinion. And I kind of just left it there. And then one day, it was probably 3 years ago, I'm driving to work in the morning, and Paranoid Android came on the radio, which is a song by them. And I'm like, I'll just leave it on. And it got pretty heavy. And, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give these guys a second chance. And I mean, this album is fantastic. And the one before it is fantastic.
Yeah. The Bend.
The Bends.
Yeah,
the Bend. And then Okay.
The Bend, it's the best 90s guitar rock album. It has held up better than anything. But after this album, they decided to do some experimentation, and honestly, I wasn't ready, but I got there. And now, I mean, I pretty much dig everything they do now. And they do some weird synthesizer type stuff, and they don't play guitar a lot anymore. And they're definitely different than they started at. But, I did a total 180 on them after years and years and years of being like, well, I heard that one song, I just don't dig it. So, but you know, I know so many people who are like, "Ugh, come on, dude, what?" I'm like, listen, I used to be like you, but I changed. I grew.
What gave me the open door was Mike Portnoy. He did an album thing on one of his YouTube channel, and he really praised it a lot. And I'm thinking, man, the guy loves all the shit I love, the Beatles and everything else. And he said that's one of the best '90s albums. So I went and did what you did. I turned around too, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like everything up to OK Computer, and when they got weird, man, you know, I know it's grower stuff. It's the kind of music that's going to grow on you. I just haven't given it the old college try enough. I should, but I get bored halfway through.
Yeah, well, see, I listen to stuff at work with headphones, and
Right.
I'm not fully engaged all the time. And that Kid A album, it's recorded really nicely, and it's soothing music. If you aren't really like looking to sing along and get into it, if you are open to synth weird stuff and polyrhythmics, whatever. I'm not a music expert, I guess, but there's a whole bunch of strange shit that happens on Kid A that if you're trying to follow along and anticipate the next move, you're not going to make it. But if you're just using it as an ambient background kind of thing, it definitely gets in there and stays there. So
yeah, that's one of those bands I got to give another chance to, because I'll be honest, I haven't really liked much of anything I've heard from them, but it's been a long time.
Lips, you might not get there. I don't know.
I think the 3 albums are the safest one for you, Pete, because of the way some of the music I know you listen to.
Yeah.
Is the what is it, Palo Honey, and then The Bend, and then OK Computer. Those 3 are just like saying Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, and Magical Mystery Tour. It's like that big block of the Beatles Improvement concept album kind of thing. That's what everybody say. If you're gonna go with Radiohead, those are the 3 albums that show the maturity from one album to another as far as evolution goes. But you might get lost after that, right, Jamie?
Yeah, try OK Computer. If that doesn't do anything for you, the hell with it. You've tried.
Yeah,
I will do that, because I hear enough about them, and like I said, I have heard a good chunk of their stuff, but it just never really clicked with me. But maybe I just didn't give them enough of a chance. So I'll do that. I'll get it. It's worth a try, right? Can't hurt, right? An hour of my time, right, and see if it's something that clicks with it. So, all right, Steve, your last choice for today.
Boom, I'm back. Hey. All right. So this band, probably one of the most famous rock and roll bands ever. Their logos and everything else, one of the most marketed bands. And I used to not be able to stand them. I've talked about this on the channel before. It seems like a deja vu this episode a little bit, but talking about the Grateful Dead. I just couldn't get into them. I even saw Jerry Garcia here with some friends at Ock, which is right next to my house, SUNY Orange, and I didn't understand any of it. I went in there, everybody's dancing, having a great time, and I'm just like the odd man out, just standing there like, what is this? And I don't know. That's another thing with adding all these records into a playlist in my record shop, and just getting to having it grow on you. Like we all talk about how music grows on you. And now I absolutely find them completely relaxing. It's another album I can put on, a band I can put on when I'm out in the backyard doing anything. A few years ago, I had a guitar player play in my shop he was also a glass blower. He came in and we did a rock and roll, like a 420 weekend. We had all different bands play in the store, and he was our house guy and doing all Dead covers. And he used to make fun of me. It's like, you're a closet Deadhead because you love all this music, but you can't let your friends know because you're a metal guy. And I'm like, hey, I can listen to everything. I like jam bands. I like death metal. I like it all. But and then I was hanging out. We were at Orange County Fair Speedway one year for the big races in the fall. It was one of those rainy days. I didn't get to race in. We were just having a campground thing. And this guy was this hippie dude that parked by us, and he was just playing Dead, and he had a harmonica out. It was just so relaxing, and it really grew on me. But so now it's one of my go-to things, especially in the summertime. The LPs I would probably pick, other than, their live stuff is probably their best, but the 3 studio albums that I like the best are Shakedown Street from '78, title track, Fire in the Mountain, just pick a couple songs from each one. The Blues from Allah album, I love head to toe
They're
from
best.
75. Help on the Way, Slipknot, of course, the title track. Terrapin Station, same thing with title track, Estimated Profit. And I was once totally against it and now totally with it. So I never got to see them back in the day. I did see Jerry Garcia. I've seen Further. I haven't seen Dead and Company yet. I was thinking maybe at Bethel this summer, see what happens. I never went to see him, but totally dig the atmosphere and what I love watching the crowd at these shows when I go.
Yeah, that's
Just
just
what is going on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've seen Further up to Peach Fest. I've been up to Peach Fest a couple times. And Peach Fest looks pretty good this year. I don't know. That's coming up right around the corner too.
I think so. Yeah. Cool.
That's
I've been
my
trying
pick, I
with
guess.
that band for decades. I've been trying to like them. I went to go see him in 1990 with my friends because Crosby,
Mhm.
Stills and Nash was opening. Three Rivers Stadium. CSN was great. Grateful Dead was the worst concert I've ever seen in my life. I was the only one sitting on the field and everybody else is on their chairs. I didn't know if this was the same song from an hour ago or the second song. I had no idea. And then I walked into a Blockbuster one time about, I don't know, early 2000s, and they had DVDs out, live DVDs. And this all came from a Grateful Dead box set. One of them was the show I saw in
Wow.
1990 in Pittsburgh. I'm like, okay, little older, little wiser. Let me rent it. Brought it back. Yep, still sucks. And it's out on YouTube too. So I tried it again recently. I watched it on YouTube maybe a year ago. Yep. I see
Not for
why I
everybody.
was sitting down. I see it.
They're not for everybody.
I got into it in years when I wasn't smoking pot too. So it wasn't like I had to be smoking weed, but I guess it helps. But
I was
Yes,
like
I-
Steve. I mean, I grew, when I was younger, man, when I was listening to nothing but hard rock and metal, man, the Dead were like, no, thanks. But I
didn't get
got
into
them,
it. Yeah.
I started getting into them like in the 90s, late 90s, and I quite enjoy them. I don't listen to them all the time, but man, the summertime, nothing like putting a Dead album on, hanging out by the pool or something like that. It's-
Yeah, like Dead, Marley, that whole kind of vibe, Almonds,
Yep.
jam bands.
yeah.
Something that Chris Allo would really love.
Oh,
Oh, geez. I think he said that Grateful Dead was his least favorite concert
yes,
too.
he did.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
That's
He
why
did.
I think I did mention this on the show. It was a similar format we did one night.
Yeah, I think it was like worst concerts or something like that, or I forget what.
So-
Their music is a hummingbird. It just sits there for me. It doesn't sweep up. It doesn't go down. It just sits there and sucks the nectar very slowly and then kind of goes away.
Well, I remember just thinking the name doesn't sound like the band. I thought Grateful Dead meant to be a heavy band. In fact, even when Woodstock, they sandwiched them between 10 Years Off and The Who. Nobody even paid attention because they're so lightweight compared to that. But I thought Grateful Dead was going to be a big, heavy sound because they had a skeleton on their album. And then you play it, it's like, I was like, yeah, it turned me off in the beginning.
Not heavy at all. Yeah.
I tell you, a lot of people say that to me all the time. It's like of course their artwork and their logos are just iconic and it's cool. The skeletons, the bears, and I think Chris Allen said that. He goes, "The skeletons, I went to the show," and perfect Chris rant. Of course it was.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, your final pick of the day.
Well, I'll tell you, I felt the same way about Grateful Dead. And we had Sirius XM radio one day at work, and the song comes on, and it's real mellow, and it's a nice acoustic number, but it's a great song. And I'm sitting there listening to it, I'm like, man, who the fuck is this? I dig this song. It's like this real 70s chill song. So I run over to the little thing, and it's Uncle John's Band by the Grateful Dead. And I stood there for a minute, like, I just like the Grateful Dead song, and I didn't even know it. Like, they
Don't tell
snuck it by me. I'm like, did anybody feel like me like tapping my feet? So I'm like, all right, that happened. So I'm gonna dig in, and that song is kind of an anomaly. A lot of their stuff isn't. It's a concise, to the point, little acoustic number. No jamming involved. They don't have a ton of stuff like that, but it softened me up a little bit. So now I can listen to them, and
Give me an album. You're going to listen to OK Computer. Give me a Grateful Dead album. I'll listen tomorrow.
Yeah,
should
me
I
too.
listen
'Cause I don't have any of these.
Listen to Blues for Allah.
Blues for Allah. Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
listen to that.
I do the same thing.
That song softened me up. So my pick here is so this is a band. They existed throughout the '90s. They broke up, and the main guitarist started another band who I've been into for years and loved them. And it's kind of similar to his '90s band, but for whatever reason, I just didn't listen to his older band for years. And the follow-up band is called High on Fire. But in the '90s, the guitarist is Matt Pike, and he was in a band called Sleep, a very
Wow.
stonerish doom band. So they were on Earache Records, and they put out a couple albums back then. Their first album is called Volume 1, which I've never been able to get into. It's kind of a weird, almost hardcore-ish kind of, I don't know, just never did it. But the second album is called Holy Mountain. And to me, these guys are basically, Black Sabbath started off 1970. They did their first couple albums. And then Black Sabbath got experimental, Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage. They started bringing in other stuff. And Sleep are like an alternate dimension. We're like, what if Black Sabbath didn't do that, but they just kept being Black Sabbath over and over, slower and slower, heavier and heavier. Just the old tape deck with the batteries dying. It's like, So then they left Earache Records, and they signed a deal with a bigger English label called London Records, and they pulled a classic, shot themselves in the foot, Sabotage financially. Got all this advance money. And they're like, we're going to record a single song that's 63 minutes. Fuck you. It's going to be like every Black Sabbath song smashed together, slow down. It's going to be this epic song about marijuana and weed and fucking high. So it's called, so then the label's like, well, fuck this. We're not releasing this. You can't do this. So it turned into this big thing, and the band broke up over it. It was such a fucking brouhaha. They eventually released it in a condensed form called Jerusalem. But then, of course, it got out there. And so it finally got out, and it was the proper name, and it was reissued, and it was called Dope Smoker.
Yeah.
And this is a reissue of it from 2012 on Southern Lord Records. It's beautiful, beautiful gatefold. And yeah, it's a 63-minute song, and it's like, it makes Black Sabbath sound like fucking Black Flag. Like, it is slow, and it's just, I don't know, I love it. And I don't smoke weed at all. I can't for my job. I don't have to, because to me, it's like, you like that band, you like this album. You don't smoke. I'm like, I think it's just a great album. And now I'm like, man, because I love doom metal. I love Sabbath. I love that whole sound. But these guys in that world, they're heavyweights.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that stuff. Oh yeah, Sleep. They're a big deal. When they reunited a couple of years ago, I was down at Maryland Death Fest in Baltimore, and that was like one of their big comeback shows. And I swear, thousands of people showed up just to see their set. Like the place was swarmed. People saw Sleep, and then it went back to the normal crowd. But man, it was a big deal, and they were good. So yeah, Dope Smoker. This is the reissue of it. Great cover art. And then they reunited and actually put out a new album a couple of years ago called The Sciences, and that's really good too. No surprises. Good, heavy, doomy. If you like Master of Reality in Volume 4, it's like a godsend. It's just that sound done perfectly. Great vocals, the guitar tone. It's like, being crushed by like gravity on Jupiter, heavy. It's fucking awesome. So, and I love Mike's other band, High on Fire. And High on Fire is a little faster, a little different, a little more, a little less, I don't want to say stonery, but a little more aggressive. And I've liked them all along. And one day I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go I bought Dope Smoker first. I bought it, and I'm like, this is fucking great. Where was this 20 years ago? I should have been listening to this all along, but whatever. I'm paying for it now. So got all their stuff. Yeah, I was actually listening to this the other day, The Sciences. This is from 2018. Great band. If you like Sabbath, if you like High on Fire, if you like that kind of sound, I recommend them all day. And no, you don't need to smoke to listen to them. I'll tell you that. Although I know a lot of people who attest to it heavily. It's a 63-minute song, and it's not a 63-minute song of all kinds of changes like King Crimson wrote. All these. It's just 63 minutes of just, fucking steamroll.
Do they do the whole song live, or do they edit it down?
I think they had to edit it because it changes, but it's like subtle variations over the time frame. It's not the same thing for 63, but it's a lot of subtle changes. But yeah, just to play that in one go would have been, ridiculous. So I think it was edited together. And now there's edits because the first release the record label did, they edited it because they're like, we're not doing a 63-minute song. And that version was still like almost an hour. So
that album's like the that album's like their most popular, the Dope Smoker. People love
it's
that
great.
record.
I love it, but it's
Yeah.
definitely one of those albums. It's not for everyone.
Oh, it's
That's-
not.
that's hard.
I try to like that band more than I do, but
Yeah.
I had a lot of employees that would play that, and I'm like, it's really good to sit and relax to and like
Yeah.
totally unwind. But
Oh, yeah.
having it on in the store, I don't know.
gotta
It's
be in the
just
mood
like,
for it.
all right, when's it gonna kick up a little bit? You know?
Yeah,
and,
that's why I like High on Fire more.
yeah, it's great
It's-
stuff. But
could- and
I
I-
used to joke with Izzy, who actually works at the warehouse that Pete knows, that she would play that all the time. I'm like, sleep's gonna put me to sleep.
You gotta be in the mood for it. You
Not
can't play it
boring,
all-
but I mean, that's definitely like if you're having a long day and trying to unwind, you put that on and you're gonna unwind for
You know
sure.
what? It's heavy too. It's not like really a chill album. It's.
I
you
think
can
it's
still do it.
chill, but I mean, I can chill out the heavy stuff. Like Opeth, I can chill out completely too. You guys have both mentioned Opeth on the show, and Opeth to me is like Opeth is actually something that I would listen to when I go and get like dental work done and shit like that. The dentist will be like, "What do you listen to?" Listen to Opeth, because I can
I
totally get
remember-
completely spaced out with that.
Yeah, you said that same thing when you ranked the albums, I remember.
Yeah, Opeth. I used to sometimes Tools. A lot of times, Yes, too. I'll listen to like something like that, kind of spacey.
Yes,
just-
the space albums. And
Yeah,
you know what?
just-
I just want to put because this is like one of my favorite album covers of all time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is just cool. Yeah, on the back too, it's just fucking
Good
really
stuff.
good stuff. That's my third choice is Sleep.
Yeah, for me, I think if you've never listened to Sleep before, I always kind of think Sleep are like if Black Sabbath continue to do the Master of Reality type thing
That's
forever.
exactly it.
That's
That is
Sleep.
it.
I would think in the band Green Lung. Does that sound like them? It's similar to them or no?
It's not to the extreme that Sleep
It-
took
it-
it, but it's in that
okay.
same mold.
Okay.
If you know the band Electric Wizard, they're kind of similar to Electric Wizard a little too. Yeah, it's like Pete said, it's like Master of Reality, but just
Okay.
take that sound and just keep on going and digging deeper and deeper, you know, so there's no light left. But yeah, I think they're very good at what they do. You know, you don't need a lot of bands doing it, but they do it very well.
Green Lung are great, by the way. Love Green Lung.
Yeah, I like the latest one. I
Yeah,
got
that's
that.
quite good. That's quite good. All right, my last choice for today is probably not going to be a surprise to anybody. This has been well documented here on Sea of Tranquility of my ignoring this band for many, many, many years. And then within the last year, totally fallen in love with King's X.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, this
Okay.
is one of those bands that everybody's like, I can't believe, Pete, you don't like King's X with all the other stuff that you listen to. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I have Gretchen. I kind of dig that, but I never really bought anything else. And what I've heard, I thought was okay, but not enough to dive into it because this is a band that I don't think you're going to get into on cursory quick listens, right? So finally,
No.
I got tired of like Butch Jones and Martin Popoff beating me over the head about King's X. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to spend a couple bucks and just dive into the catalog. I got this little box set, which has, their first 5 albums. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then I started buying the latter period stuff. And I was like, all right, I think I get it finally. Great musicianship, great vocal harmonies. Everything about their music I really like. And it's just like, again, just a band that just didn't click with me for the longest time. Now they do. And I'm glad I went the extra mile. So there you have it.
Yeah, I remember writing to Pete the very first time we ever interacted. I asked him about that band. Not really sure I dig them too much.
Right.
And but they made an impression because I went to Woodstock '94 in New York, but not at the original site. They moved it. It kind of corporate. But it wasn't like '99 where they burned to the ground.
No.
But this was awesome. But they were Friday night, and I know. The only song I heard for the first time before, because they did a cover of Jimi Hendrix Manic Depression. But other than that, all the stuff was brand new to me, and I loved it. And I was a fan from that show of Woodstock '94. I had to go find out. There's a couple bands like that, Live and Collective Soul, and them. They made an impression because I didn't know anything about them, and I walked away saying, I gotta get this band.
Yeah, good stuff. Good band. I'm glad I went and just rediscovered them, I guess, for really the first time. So Really cool. Great guitar work, man. Ty Tabor. I'm just totally into his playing, and I love the vocals of the band. And yeah, it's good stuff. Some of it's really heavy, some of it's kind of poppy, some of it's
I'll have to
proggy.
listen myself.
some of it's
I'm still on the fence of not really into them. So
yeah, Steve, I would say
Wow.
give it a try, because I was
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised. For what I don't know what the wall was that I was putting up for all those
yeah, I don't
years.
know.
I don't know where to keep
didn't really
them.
didn't
In my
give them a
collection, do I
chance.
keep
though.
them
didn't listen.
Alternative, hard rock, regular rock,
Mm.
metal. I don't
Yeah,
know where to keep
they
them.
don't really belong anywhere. And I think that maybe
That's right.
kind of like pushed me away, because I'm like, I just don't get it. I'm not really sure what they're doing. So
And they were on Megaforce.
yeah. So very strange. Great band though. So there you have it, everybody. A fun conversation about bands that we got into way late, and but better late than never. So let us know down in the comments below any bands or artists that you kind of ignored for ages and ages, years and years, decades and decades, that finally one day you rediscovered or discovered for the first time. You're like, wow, this is what I've been missing all these years, right? So put that down below. And I want to thanks for the Squares crew who's here tonight, and hello to all the ones who couldn't make it. Hopefully see them back next week. But thanks a lot to Jamie and Rick and to Craig for coming in at the 11th hour today to fill in some empty seats. It was fun having you guys on the show. So as always, thanks. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together all the damn time. Tune in next week for more stuff here at the Hudson Valley Squares. Tomorrow we got In the Prague Seat, Wednesday new album review day, Thursday the Monsters Den, Friday morning at the Funhouse with Martin Popoff, Saturday the UK Connection, and Sunday album homework assignment for Chris Canzaneri, Steve Keeler, Rick Labonte, Ryan Scow, Jamie Laszlo, and Craig Kaminsky. I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Take care.